Hi, everyone. It's the Catholic CEO, Henry Kutarna. Welcome to this Exemplary Catholic Leaders series. Today, I have a special guest, Nick Rodriguez. Nick, how are you?
Doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, very welcome. Glad to have you. So, Nick is the managing partner of Bridged Tax and Bookkeeping. You can actually see his sign there, so you can't forget what Nick is doing. He's also the owner of Nick's Mobile Detailing. And so, Nick, I'm wondering if you could, we'll begin in our little series here. What is your businesses? What are you doing? You've got a couple of businesses here. What do you do?
Sure. So first, Bridge Tax and Bookkeeping, we really focus on small businesses. We help with payroll, taxes, monthly and quarterly bookkeeping, and then we also help with payroll or tax planning, excuse me. It's kind of where we focus. We like to help small businesses that are family oriented and new businesses. So that's kind of where we focus. And then when it comes to Nick's Mobile Detail, we really focus on in shop as well as mobile detailing. We do window tint, ceramic coatings, and then we also do paint correction. We just opened up a new shop called Next Detail and Tint, located in Richmond, Texas. So we're excited about that new part.
That sounds great. So, let's maybe one more question about your business. You started a new business then. So how does a person go about doing this? Like, what do you do? I'm going to talk about your faith in a second, but to start a business, many in our audience have started or are planning to start a business. What do you have to do? What do you have to take into account to start and open up a shop like that?
Well, a lot of it has to do with marketing, planning, marketing, creating a good customer base was really part of the plan before we opened the shop up. Started with mobile a few years back and have slowly expanded that. Have a few employees helping with that. It's part planning, part making adjustments. You'll learn very quickly that your original plans might change, and if having one plan might be effective, that's okay. So it's really about learning as much as you can too along the way, because if you don't learn, you're not going to learn from your mistakes. So I think that's a big part of it, just being willing to fail. So
Yeah, that's very interesting. One of the buzzwords that you and I both know is pivoting, right? If you think you have only one plan, guess what? There's about three plans that you might have to produce to do a business. So this
absolutely.
pivoting thing, yeah, yeah. So Nick, about your Catholic faith, then tell us about that. What's your faith story? What's the faith journey?
Sure. So I grew up Catholic, raised with a fully Catholic family, extended family. We did the weekly mass, did regular rosaries. But to be honest, it didn't become fully personal until I was about 20. I started to ask the questions and really wonder what the purpose of my life was. So that's kind of where it began. And then from there, starting businesses, definitely it has increased it more along with having a family. Those two things, you may have plans again and God will very quickly change those plans. So you just have to be willing to pivot and willing to make adjustments.
I had a call with a fellow last week, someone I had not been in touch with for over 10 years. And he's a successful business guy, has owned and started two or three businesses. And this was exactly the point. His family is at a certain age, his children are teenagers, and he now is looking at his whole life and his business life and saying, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing here as a father and a husband? So it's a really good theme. So you grew up as a Catholic. Did you have, you might say, a reconversion of any kind? Did you come through intellectual? Did you read into the stronger faith, or was it a sort of an experience, an emotional experience that you might have had?
Sure. I think through my college years, I had a lot of doubt, the world kind of got to me. And so I had moments of questioning the faith, and I don't think I was definitely not where I am now. Um, and so I think that through those questions, through just seeking, talking to my parents a little bit more, once I felt like we were at that comfortable state in our lives where we could have those conversations, it really allowed me to dive a little deeper. I finally opened the Bible a little more regularly and read on my free time. And I think that having the word uh, regularly in my life kind of helped me answer some questions and just the serendipities that kind of started to happen. Uh, Once I started reading a little more regularly, it was kind of nothing more than, you know, I
Yeah.
guess that could have been
Interesting.
called a miracle. So it was,
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So, Nick, then you try to live a Catholic life, a solid Catholic life. We might call you a faithful Catholic, yes. And so how does that faith correspond to the business then? Are you let me ask it this way. How do you operate your business and your new one? So you've got several businesses now. How do you operate them according to Catholic principles? Is there anything overtly that you do?
well, I think it really comes down to leading with honesty and fairness. I think those are the two cores of where I try to lead every decision with when it comes to employees, my customers, um, pricing. You know, I try to be fair with everything to where it's one, it's going to be something that my customers are happy with once we get the end results. And two, something that I can support my family with. So there's that middle ground I'm trying to balance all the time, but keeping faith definitely helps. And if there's a question, it's as easy as looking at my faith and finding the answer there. So I
Yeah,
think keeping
that's
those two together is very important, and
sure.
sometimes temptation to separate them, but
Yeah, I like that approach. And so, of course, your customers are not all going to be Catholic. They're going to be people of many different persuasions, and probably even your employees. I imagine they're not all particularly Catholic, or are they? Do you select for Catholic people in your faith in the faith in the hiring procedure?
sure. So that's definitely a priority for me. I do my best to
Yeah,
find Catholic employees, but the demand, unfortunately, is not always filled. So occasionally I seek elsewhere, but I find that as an opportunity to hopefully evangelize with
yeah,
patience and with
yeah,
time. Hope to show
yeah.
them that good works are done, and that comes from somewhere. So
Sure. In an accounting and bookkeeping business, and I'm familiar with that kind of a business. Of course, not only do I use that, but some of our clients in the past have been in that field. And so, uh, what's the opportunity there? A lot of people tell me that, they're tempted to operate in a gray area, let's call it, in bookkeeping and accounting. Do you see that? Is there anything that you do to in your business to run on an overtly Catholic basis there?
there's the occasional client who wants to push into the gray area, but it's really as easy as pointing to the tax code. I follow the tax code just like I do my best to follow the commandments. And so I think they kind of work hand in hand. And if you're honest with your work, you'll be honest with following the laws and following the rules. That way you can approach these gray area customers and clients with an answer and a response. Hopefully they understand. And because really it comes down to, um, the end results, which we don't want them to be stressed about a gray area decision you made. It's kind of the goal of my business is to remove the stress, and to be honest.
Right,
That's what we
right.
do.
Yeah. I used to have a client many years ago, a trucking company, refrigerated trucking. And he had a saying or approach, a philosophy that once in a while he would fire his lowest revenue customers because they might be taking too much effort for the margin that would be earned. Now, that's a different story than a faith gray area, but I guess you could say if you apply the tax code and the commandments code, which is another type of code for us, it should be a clear beacon for you as to how you run a business, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So, Nick, the idea then of running a business according to Catholic principles, you're trying to do that. You're trying to, create employment for people and income for yourself and your family. I know you have a family and you need to create income for them. What would you say is the the pressure out there on Catholics? I mean, most of us know it or feel that it's going to be harder and harder, more difficult to be a Catholic. Do you see that? Do you see pressures? Are people putting pressure on you because they know you're a Catholic leader? I know in business, if you're honest and you're faithful to the commitments you make and you're fair, no one's going to criticize you for that. But do you get any flack for being Catholic if people know that about your business?
To be honest, I've had a lot of good grace when it comes to been able to help a lot of Catholics actually with both both industries, both companies recently. And it, even when I don't, they're always very graceful. And not that they always know. I'm not always forthright with being Catholic, but I do my best if I see an opportunity to have a nice conversation. Sometimes it leads there. But no, I don't think I've received any negativity directly associated with it. Thanks be to God.
Yeah, that's great. No, no, Deo gratias for that. That's for sure. So if you have, let's say you have friends or people that you come across, they'll come to you, Nick, how do I start a business? What's the secret to starting a business? What would you say to them? Talking about, do you have to have money? Do you have to have capital? What's your attitude? How much time do you have to put in? Can you give us a few, what would you say to a person like that who wants to start a business?
Sure. Well, depends on the business, first of all, but I think that having a little bit of money is important. I'm not going to say you need everything to get started, but um, just a little bit to get started. That means bootstrap it. By that I mean do what you can with what you have. So if that means pulling equipment from your home and using that until you can buy professional equipment, then go ahead and do that. But I think it's also important to start before everything's perfect. Um, Because if you wait, I've done this in my past with other businesses that I tried to start. It was waiting and waiting, and eventually it became nothing. So I think that waiting till everything's perfect is a big mistake. Don't do that. And learn real skills. It's important to go into every employment opportunity you have to learn not only with practical skills with that particular job, but learning from the business owner, if you're close to them or management, learning about the business because that's going to kind of open the doors for understanding how to operate your future business if that's what you said.
Yeah, you've said it even before, a few minutes before. You've said that there are lessons to be learned from business, and of course, I know that too. We have both experienced that, and so you're saying keep those lessons in mind. Don't be forgetting those lessons. Remember the lessons and act accordingly. Right?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's important to do something that you enjoy because if you're trying to build something from the bottom up and you don't enjoy it, you're going to have a hard time pushing through the long nights that you need to really get the business going.
Yeah. How do you balance work and family? Let's say you have a couple of businesses, and I know you and I've talked before. Family is important to you, and so how do you balance that? What would you say to somebody? Hey, can you have a family life? I know it sounds like a trick question, but how do you balance that?
Sure. That's probably the hardest thing for me right now, especially with just starting the shop. But it's about setting time. Um, taking the occasional day off when maybe you can't always afford it, but it's more important to spend that time with your family. Um, so it's talking to the wife, talking to the children, making plans ahead of time, and really sticking to them. I think that's the only way to do it, and hopefully with time I'll gain some flexibility. But for now, it's just planning and spending as much time as possible.
That's great. That's great. I have to tell you that especially back in my teens or in my early 20s and even in my 30s, one of the greatest therapies for me was to detail a vehicle. So I'm telling you that I know a little bit about what goes into detailing a vehicle, but I used to, certain times you'd spend a half a day or a day, do the full detail right down to the level of so that it would be in the garage and you wouldn't want to take it out of the garage, right? You
Right.
drive down the street and you see a puddle and you go, oh no, I got to avoid that puddle. So anyway, it's a story about detailing as a business that people appreciate. Always there's a service, right? And so let's say a young person, let's say it's me in my teens and my 20s, and I love detailing. What would you say to a young person who wants to start a business? You've told us about money and time and so on, but somebody, a 21-year-old out of college or not going to college, let's say, learning a trade, what's the lesson for starting a business for that kind of an age group?
Well, are we talking about practical lessons or just kind of
I think
general?
general lessons, yeah. Yeah, what are the generals?
Sure. I mean, I think that the thing I'm going to promote with my children is I don't want them to be business owners one day, but I think it's important to learn how to work for someone first. And so
Mhm,
when you
mhm.
learn that work ethic and you learn how to serve and learn the ins and outs, that'll kind of teach you one, how to respond to your employee, how to be treated as an employee. Because I think that's definitely one of the most important things. If you plan to have employees, um, you need to treat them right, and I think that that's kind of where it starts, is learning how to be an employee.
I love that. I know many family businesses where I come in, I'm brought in as a consultant sometimes. Every founder tells me that. You've said the same thing. Go out, get some experience working for somebody else because inside of a family business, let's say, you create a certain expectations because there's the hierarchy of the family versus the hierarchy of a business, and that's two different things. So I like what you said about that. And so do you find that people do that? Like, are you aware of family business, let's say, where they do that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know them personally, but I've definitely heard some stories about uh, the parents who own businesses requiring their kids to either have a job within the business, which sometimes can cause a conflict, or they'll make them get a job outside and say, prove to me that you can be an employee elsewhere and then you can come work for me.
Yeah, yeah, that's
You know,
great.
there's
I love it. Well, because founders, is this right? Founders often say, well, that my son or my daughter not ready yet. But the son or daughter says, well, dad, you should move aside, step aside. I'm ready. So you
yeah,
get this conflict. So it's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, so do you have aspirations that your family would join you in these businesses at some point? Is there a succession plan? You might say, I know you're young enough that it's probably far away, but would that be something that you would advise people to do? Start a family business and then keep it going for several generations. Is that a thing?
I have mixed feelings about that. I think that we're all kind of meant to build our own empire per se.
Yeah.
And I think that if we unfortunately take the crutch of our parents, sometimes that doesn't allow us to really see the fruits of labor and see what it really means to start something from the ground up. So I think each child is different. You just need to know your children, and hopefully, I'll have some kids that are fit for the job. But otherwise, we'll take them the route that God intends them to go. So we'll
I
see.
like your approach because there is a challenge in so-called inheritance, right? When you inherit a business or even inherit an executive position or even the leadership of a business, sometimes there can be a flaw built into that. So what you're saying is watch your each child and understand where that child is, what is their skill set? Should they do this or should they do something different? That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. I think as a parent, that's one of the most important jobs is to learn your children and kind of aid them as they grow up and find their skills. And
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure a summer job detailing, would be a good experience for somebody else's child as well. Probably not just your own, but your neighbor's children. Hey, Nick, can you give my son a summer job? Sure, go right ahead. Let me tell you what this manual labor is like. Because there's labor intensity to detailing, isn't there?
oh, absolutely. And then you add the Houston heat, and it's a whole nother level. But yeah, it puts you to work, and it's definitely
It's
worth it.
a form of gainful employment, that's for sure. Okay, so Nick, obviously we could talk a lot more about this, but we're at the point of we have these brief interviews. Where can we find you? How do we promote your business? How does our client group and our audience support you and promote your business? Where do they go? Is there a website? Do you have information for us? And we'll be putting this into the show notes, by the way, so this will be there for sure. But how do we support your businesses?
Yeah, so at Bridge Tax and Bookkeeping, we have a website. Simple. It's bridgetaxandbookkeeping.com. You can go on there and reach out to us via email. You can even text us. You can fill out a quote request. And then we can also set up a meeting appointment. That's usually what we do with potential clients is go through a 30-minute meeting and we'll discuss what your needs are. For Nick's Mobile Detail, you can also visit the website, which is nixmobiledetail.com. We provide mobile detailing to Katy, Sugar Land, Fulshire, and now Richmond area. And then our detail shop is located in Richmond, just outside of Pecan Grove. A lot of people are familiar with that neighborhood in the area. Where you can find us through nixmobiledetail.com there as well.
That's great. Well, thanks again, Nick, for being with us. God bless you and your business and your family. And thanks again for being with us.
Thank you, Henry. Appreciate your time.
All right. See you later.
All righty. God bless.